your great wisdom. You are incredibly passionate about reducing meat consumption while supplying consumers with something, that is tasty, it's good, it's nutritious, it's all those things that we want from food. How does this work that you're doing connect with, the bigger issue we're discussing here today, the two big C's, climate change?
Meat is a real problem. It's at a global scale. You could almost say that almost a third of the problem of climate change is associated with our sort of meat eating habit. And how does that work? Well, ruminant animals, they emit methane, so that's a direct sort of carbon dioxide problem. But it's actually more than that. It's more about the food system. If you look at the average farmer in the world, what is a farmer doing? Well, are they growing sort of vegetables for us? Well, no, the average farmer is actually growing feedstock to feed the pigs and the chickens and the cows that we like to eat. So the vast majority of agricultural land on the planet is devoted to our meat eating habit, our animal meat eating habit. And the downside is we keep eating more and more meat. Now, in Australia, we're actually declining, but the rest of the world is catching up. And we're going to run out of land really soon.
How much meat do we actually eat? Do you have the numbers?
I think Australia now is about the sort of 90 kilos or something per person per year. I think we have been as high as 120. I think we were the kings of meat eating in Australia. I think that there's now, I think Hong Kong beats us now, which is kind of interesting because the average meat eating on the planet is sort of 30 kilos per person per year.
That's a huge carbon footprint.
Oh God, if everyone ate as much meat as we did, animal meat, game over. There is no land that can support that. So the problem actually is that most people globally don't eat a lot of meat, but in developing countries, they aspire to eat more meat. So from a V2 perspective, we want to solve the problem in Australia and have the best plant-based meat in Australia so that other countries would kind of say, well, maybe it's kind of cool to be like the Australians are doing. They adopt plant-based meat almost, they don't even go to meat, they go straight to plant-based meat.
And so how are you shifting that? What is it that you're doing specifically to shift that? Obviously you're making plant-based meat, but that's the first step.
Yeah,
what are the steps that follow?
Job one, plant-based meat as much as possible, just the quantity, because today our carbon footprint is 2.5 kilos of carbon per kilo of meat. Difficult to know, is that good or bad? Well, beef will be 70. Yeah, so we're already sort of 30 times better. We think that we can get to carbon negative. And that's when it gets really interesting. When you eat meat and you know that it's good for the planet. And the way we're doing that is by reducing our carbon footprint, so renewable energy in our factories, etc. But then when you start looking at our ingredients, which are things like canola oil and soy, you can grow those crops in a way that sequesters carbon into the soil. And that means that you end up with a net carbon negative. And then we add it all together, and this is work that we're doing with the CSIRO. And we have a roadmap. We think we're going to be carbon negative in about 4 years.
From your perspective as an innovator in a very accessible world, the world of food, what is the final frontier? Like, how do we really make people understand that it's the simple things, the kind of banal, simple things that you do day to day that can actually shift the carbon footprint, can actually shift the impact that we're having on the planet in a positive way?
So changing your diet, plant-based, single biggest thing you can do. Is figure out how you transport yourself. Another big thing you can do. Think about the stuff that you buy. How much stuff do you need? Every bit of stuff that you have has a carbon footprint associated with it. And everyone could do those three things. And that would probably solve more than half of the problem, just those things. Companies like us, we got to make it easier for people so that they can afford to feed themselves. It mustn't be more expensive. It mustn't be more difficult. And I think that's the responsibility of entrepreneurs and companies to figure out how to change the system so we can just be good humans doing what we love to do. And in doing that, we're also good for the planet. And that's the key problem that we have to solve.
I'm curious to know how do you think that us as Australians will be eating in 20 years' time in Australia? How will we be eating? What will the spreads on our tables look like?
It will be the same dishes, but it'll be plant-based. So
Right.
it'll be exactly, you'll be eating your kofta that your grandmum cooked for you, and that kofta will be made by V2 Food or someone else, and it'll taste absolutely delicious, and you will just love it, and you won't even think about it. And you might not even think that you've just saved the planet. You'll be doing what you love, eating the food that you love.
Subconscious. Yeah.
And we've figured it out so that will actually be carbon negative and restore the planet. And you will just have a wonderful conversation with the people that you share the food that you love with, and you won't even think about it.
Is that going to take 20 years? I mean, I asked you what our diet's going to look like in 20 years or what we're going to be eating in 20 years. Is it going to take 20 years?
In 20 years, we'll have solved it. I mean, we've got to solve it in 10. You know, solving this thing slowly is not solving it. We've got to move quickly. So we drive ourselves right to the very edge as a company because we're so committed to the mission of solving a planetary problem. So as fast as we can possibly do it. So let's hope that we've solved this in 10, not 20.